43 degrees right now. So downtown last night at City Hall, they had a meeting where people were supposed to get together and express their thoughts on a civilian oversight board of the St. Louis City Police Department. And things got, let's just say, a little bit out of hand. We'll have one of the participants in that meeting joining us in just a few minutes. But now live via Skype from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch is Nick Pistor, one of the reporters covering it last night. Good morning, Nick. Nick, are you there?
Oh, I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, good. Thanks for joining me this morning. Tell us what happened last night.
Well, it was a very sort of chaotic scene. That for about an hour, it appeared that things were going well. People were able to debate and give their feedback on this civilian oversight board, which is essentially a move to establish a civilian operation to review issues of police conduct in the city. About an hour into it, things appeared to turn as police officers began testifying against the bill. Many of the officers had arrived on their own time, out of uniform. As they began to testify, some in the crowd became very upset. The volume in the room started going up, and they were appearing to talk over the officers as they attempted to testify. At that point, Jeff Rorda, who is the manager of the Police Officers Union, stood up and called for a point of order. When he did that, the chairman of the committee, Alderman Terry Kennedy, responded and told him, you don't tell me how to run my committee. That sort of started a back and forth, and the volume in the room just got really loud. People started yelling. Rorda appeared to try to walk up to the front of the room. In that process, what we saw was just a melee develop of people shoving, pushing, screaming, and it really devolved into a chaotic mess.
Who were the people, Nick, who were so upset at police officers testifying there?
Well, it was a large group of protesters who had arrived. I think we knew the evening had the potential to not go well because we were in a really packed room in close quarters. There's only two exits, and you had people. It was sort of a half and half crowd. You had protesters who want a bill like this, and you have a lot of police who were there on their own time who don't want a bill like this. So I think it had the makings of a problem, and it certainly devolved into one.
Was this just a pro forma thing? Do the comments of the public or the police officers have any impact on what the Board of Aldermen is going to do?
They can. This bill in particular has more than 15 co-sponsors, which almost would indicate that it's almost assured of passage. But that could change as these types of things develop. It is not normal for them to have evening board meeting hearings like this, so that was a rarity. It gave the opportunity for a lot more people to show up. Alderman Kennedy, who runs this committee now, has been a big proponent of this bill, has wanted civilian oversight in St. Louis for more than a decade, seemed to struggle to keep control of this meeting. As we would see, people, there would be outbursts or clapping, but for a while it seemed like that we were going to get through the night without any incident. But as we know in St. Louis these days, it's pretty hard to do that sometimes.
Do you think this would have happened if they had just used a larger room, Nick?
I think it's certainly the potential for that. I mean, I think a larger room gives people a lot more room to spread out. So when you have these situations like a melee, which sort of people don't really know what's going on. There's someone pushes someone, but it may not be a push because they don't. They're in close quarters, so it just develops into chaos, and it looks like people are fighting, and it's a lot of misunderstandings. That would be solved if they had possibly had a larger room for the crowd, but you never know how many people are going to show up. This is a room that's been holding hearings for 100 years, but things are a little different in St. Louis.
I'm going to have Jeff Rorda on in just a couple of minutes and get his perspective on what happened last night, and I'm going to ask him this question, but I want to ask you first. Why isn't there a civilian oversight review board here like there is there's one in Columbia? I know there's one in Kansas City.
Correct. St. Louis is one of the largest cities in the nation that does not have one. That's been a source of a lot of debate in recent years. However, the reasons for that, a lot of political, they attempted to pass one in 2006. Mayor Francis Lay, who actually supports civilian oversight, this civilian oversight bill presently before us, vetoed the previous one that had passed in 2006, saying that it was too anti-police. Apparently, they've worked out a lot of the mechanics in that for this one. But a lot of, if you look nationally, a lot of departments are moving to more of an audit model where they're bringing in outside auditors to look at police departments. Some people are arguing that these civilian review boards are sort of dated. They're sort of like a 1970s era relic and may not be as effective, don't have the teeth that a lot of people will want, therefore they're not as useful. So there's going to be a debate about that, about what impact and what use civilians have and what information they can get into their police department. It seems like a lot of people think it's a good idea to have some mechanism for civilians to look at what their police department is doing. But at the same time, we have a rising crime rate. Arrests are down 40% as well, and some people are worried that this would further restrain police officers from attempting to do their jobs.
This would not have affected what happened in Ferguson because it's not in the city of St. Louis. Are there any municipalities outside of St. Louis City here in our region that have such a thing?
No, and to my knowledge, what proponents hope for is that St. Louis passes this and it trickles down to other municipalities, as we've seen many times with other things. And that's really the big hope for people who want this.
Nick, I appreciate you joining me this morning. Thanks for the story.
Thank you, Paul.
That's Nick Pistor, terrific reporter. I see him on Twitter all the time. In fact, he's one of the first people I get information from about whenever anything is going wrong in our city. Nick seems to be in the midst of it and reporting on it for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and for STLTODAY.com. When we come back, Jeff Roorda of the Police Officers Association with his take on all of this on the Big 550 KTRS.